The World War II shipwreck of the SS Thistlegorm lies at the foot of the Gulf of Suez in the Egyptian Red Sea. This British vessel was heavily loaded with wartime military supplies, much of which can still be seen today. It was bombed and sunk in the early hours of the 6th of October 1941 by the German Luftwaffe. Lost for several years, the SS Thistlegorm was discovered by Jacques Cousteau in 1955. It became a world-class visitor destination from the early 1990s when rediscovered by divers. Since then, it has generated over $100 million in tourist visitor revenues, ranking it higher than many of Egypt's other leading monuments. SS Thistlegorm is acknowledged internationally as one of the greatest shipwrecks in the world. But there's been another price to pay for allowing an estimated 1 million visitors to dive on this famous ship.
My first dive in the wreck is one of the fondest memories I have, because it came to us very unexpectedly. We had heard from a fisherman in El Tor that in that certain spot, when they throw lines, the lines get hooked onto something and they have difficulties. So they suggested that there might be something down there. We went and did our first dive, 4 friends of mine and myself, and as soon as the boat anchored, small fisherman boat, about 11 meters long, we descended and we were just flabbergasted. There lay that dark, great shape extending right and left, and we realized we are descending on a wreck that we didn't know anything about. The wreck was so overwhelming that our hearts started to race, and then you come to the conclusion that, wow, this is so big, this is so intact, this is so beautiful. We started to explore it. We've explored it as much as we could. Almost all of us were about to run out of air. We were concentrated on absorbing all the new impressions, on wanting to understand what's going on, what have we found there, and we didn't realize that it was the Thistlegorm until some time has passed. Then we started finding artifacts in it that had Thistlegorm printed on it. We went back to the old film of Cousteau, and we discovered, wow, we have actually stumbled on the Thistlegorm. We thought about it, and what should we do? Then we decided that we would take a vow to keep that wreck, that war memorial, that magnificent grave as a secret. And we took another vow not to take a single artifact from the wreck. And we kept diving that wreck for 2 years, maybe 2.5 years, exploring it, looking into the magnitude of that wreck and the meaning of that wreck. We were reliving the moments when it was attacked. You could almost see the people running, the fires, the explosions, and we always thought of the ones that died. And then later on the wreck was discovered by others. Maybe they saw a boat of ours always anchored there and wondered, what dive site is that? Let's go and have a look. We don't know. But then it became everybody's knowledge, and unfortunately I have to say that then the actual decay and the actual destruction, almost the systemic destruction, started. And I'm very disappointed when I dive the wreck nowadays, because what I see has very little to connect me to what I saw. Nowadays, when I go diving, the first thing that hits my ears before I can even see what's going on are the sounds of the wreck that were not there before. You have people tying ropes, sometimes up to 30 bolts on top. They're all tying their ropes to the chain, to the wreck, to things on the wreck, and with the movement, the up and down movement of the waves, you have so much moving on the wreck, metal against metal, and it is breaking the wreck piece by piece. chimney broke, many other things broke. People don't realize that they are tying to a wreck that sank in 1941. And people unfortunately don't know where to tie. So if you keep going to the wreck and dive it, say once a month, you will definitely see the carnage, you will definitely see the loss. And if this continues, in another 10 years, maybe less, there will be no wreck left. There will be an empty hull. This is something that hurts inside when you've seen the wreck in its pristine form, untouched, inhabited, and lying there majestically. It hurts to see what's going on. It hurts also a lot to realize that people were trying to make money out of that wreck. A war memorial. If you realize and hear about that people were auctioning parts of the wreck in Europe, Lee-Enfield rifles, parts from motorcycles, there was even once a whole motorcycle taken out, and they don't realize that what they've taken out will decay, will rust, and will be gone. But they have destroyed a beautiful, one of the most beautiful wrecks that ever existed, and for nothing. The other thing is, the number of divers and boats going to the wreck needs to be limited, because the wreck is like the reef. It has a carrying capacity, and if you exceed the carrying capacity, damage will occur. I see this as the only way to preserve one of the greatest wrecks in the world, one of the great wrecks that signify the role of Egypt in World War II as a passage, and simply a magnificent piece of history.
We're going to talk about the SS Thistlegorm, which really needs no introduction as a leading world-class dive site. But we want to talk about what's happening to it, how we can maintain the wreck in good condition and stop any further damage. A little recap of how things have gone the last 20 years. It was discovered back in the 50s by Jacques Cousteau on Calypso. This is well publicised. As the diving industry developed in the northern Red Sea, then the dive operators, instructors started to come to Thistlegorm, and that's what we know it as today, as a dive site where many people visit the wreck on a daily basis. Back then, we used to tie in on ropes, and when I came to Sharm in '98 to begin work as a guide, it was all done by ropes. And this was a lot better. It wasn't perfect, but it allowed you to tie on, wrap the rope around smoothly with nautically approved and effective knots, and hold the boat in place. If you were the only boat, it was quite easy. You'd put one on the front and also maybe down the midships. When you have lots of boats, the skipper's job is well, several jobs. He's got to ensure he gets there, that the divers are safe and they can do the dive. He's got to look after his own boat. He's got to stop his boat hitting other boats. So on those situations where it's crowded, he needs to put an anchor in. So the anchor would keep the boat away from others. He would then need to put a bow line and a stern line in. At some stage, a skipper probably quite innocently suggested using a shackle, which was a very short steel rope with 2 eye holes or rings on the end, so that could be bound round almost anything. He would have been worried about his ropes being cut. Not everybody ties in as good as the next guide, so the last thing he wants is his boat, the rope to snap or come undone, and then he's got a lot of damage. So his concerns are very genuine. So what you have on Thistlegorm is a lot of interested people all vying with each other to, get their job done, to keep everybody happy, to be safe, to protect property. And that amalgamation of interests often isn't a really happy or effective marriage. So the guy probably thought, I'll take the shackle down. Seems like a good idea. He'd have put it round something. Ropes didn't break, the dives were done, and everybody was seemingly happy until after a few months or years. Then we noticed the soaring effect. These shackles, they were not tightly bound around things like ropes were. The ropes wouldn't really move. But the shackles, of course, are soaring. And slowly but surely we begin to see the wreck, the metalwork split and crack and come apart and no longer resemble what it used to be. Now, one of the obvious solutions might be to return to ropes, but of course now that you've had these cracks on the metalwork, where you used to put the ropes, it's now jagged and it's very sharp, so that isn't always an option now. You have to do something else. In 2007 and 8, HEPCA, the Environmental Protection Organisation, they had a very good plan. They instigated the first fixed mooring system, and this was a 2-phase project. They drilled into the seabed, and they put what I thought were very good moorings all the way around the wreck, with the idea that the boats could throw their anchors off. They could also put a bow and a stern line in, and if need be, they could run just an ascent line to the wreck, which wouldn't have caused any heavy pulling. The idea was good, and it did run for a long time, but it suffered from over-dependence and just excessive use, which in the end tore it apart. It was a shame. But it did prove one thing, that if there is a system there, people will use it. And for the first time in years, we had a Thistlegorm completely free of lines. There were no shadows because everybody's off it. And you could see the wreck as it's meant to be seen, just uncluttered and sitting there in all its glory. It's very difficult to blame anybody here. Egypt is very good, I think, at looking after its monuments. The trouble is they're mostly land-based. If somebody comes along with a hammer and chisel and goes up to the Sphinx and starts chipping away and knocking chunks out of it, I'm pretty sure he's going to get a tap on the shoulder by the security officials looking after it. Now, the problem with Thistlegorm, it's underwater, and you don't get the same level of security presence or resources underwater. It's not possible. So it's really down to those who use the wreck, who dive in it, who benefit from it, to come up with some sort of solution. To a point, you can blame guides for inappropriately tying. Can you blame them for tying on at all? Unless we provide the means to do that job properly, it's very difficult to report abuse when you need to be giving them the means to do their work abuse-free. So the plan in progress at the moment is to come up with another solution to provide permanent moorings, and one of the ideas being put forward is to tie onto Thistlegorm in a place that Thistlegorm tied on itself. We have lots of mooring bits all the way around the wreck. They're very strong and sturdy, and these were used to tie Thistlegorm to its own ports and jetties around the world. If you can secure a 5,000-ton merchant ship, you should be able to use the same points to secure 40-ton dive boats, although the angles are different. These were used to going downwards onto a port, but now they have to go upwards. We've all done very well out of Thistlegorm. Everybody has either earned money as a guide, as an operator, safari boats, guidebooks. I'm an author. I've done very well out of producing books on this amazing wreck, so I feel as a guide and an author I should do my bit. And I'd just like to support this project, this video, the new mooring installation idea, and encourage others to do the same. And I hope it's going to be around a long, long time, for many more years, and for everybody to enjoy.
Friends ask me, Adel, what should we do? And there has to be a solution to that problem. And we need to identify that there's an ongoing daily destruction. And this should be our immediate objective. The immediate objective, the short-term objective, is to stop first what's going on. And the long-term objective is to educate the people, to prevent it from happening, to make sure that every diver that goes there was lectured by his instructor, by his dive master, the deckhands, the skippers, everyone involved should develop that feeling of awe, that respect to that wreck. They should all understand what a war memorial is, what a grave is, and respect that wreck and deal with it accordingly. This will take time. This will take an effort, a concentrated effort.
We've got to look at the pressures on a diving guide, and this is one of the most thankless tasks you can have on your week's work. A lot of guides in Sharm, they spend the week doing the local diving, Tiran Ras Mohammed, and then getting up early is now a one-day safari guide. There's no reefs alongside, there's no mooring systems, there's nothing. He's 2 or 3 miles out to sea. She's got to jump off the bow in strong conditions. There could be currents. You could have anything from 15 to 20 guests up there who've flown 3,000 miles, spent a lot of money, all waiting for you to tie the rope, come up and say, let's go. Now, the pressures on the guide with those conditions, with that amount of guests involved, in currents that can often, as you swim down to tie on the wreck, obviously you'll try and get an idea of where the currents are going so that you don't end up being off it, because the longer you're down there, the deeper you're going, the longer that rope's getting, the more of that rope's getting pulled in the current, and it's dragging you away. The temptation to make that final dash, tie onto something quick and gasp for breath is enormous. So over the years you do get experience, you do get to do your research and think of the best places to tie. And tying on, you have to achieve many things. You need to keep your dive boat secure. You need to not damage the wreck. So we like to tie onto things that Thistlegorm itself used to tie itself onto ports and jetties, or objects so strong that they will withstand the pressure of the boat. We also have to avoid the lines of other boats, because sometimes when you get 10 or 20 boats there, and I think I've been there when there was 33 boats, which is it's a world-class attraction. You don't always get it to yourself. So it's reasonable to expect a lot of boats and a lot of lines, and they have to be tied so that they don't all catch each other. So it does require a lot of skill and experience on the part of the guide. But yes, they have a lot of pressure. So how long are we going to allow them to dive in those conditions? The good guides, they will always make the good choices, they'll get the job done. But it's becoming more popular, and I think it's reasonable not to force people to use it. It's very easy to sort this problem out. So I think to make life easier for everybody, not put the guides under pressure, push them towards decompression sickness or injuries. These ropes getting pulled, these shackles, it's decisions that have to be made sometimes in split seconds. So I'm all for making Thistlegorm a safer place. Not too easy to the point that it reduces the skill level of the diver. If you say, well, it's really easy now, we don't want newly qualified open water divers going there. You still are a long way from home. It's still deep. There are currents. There are hazards and overheads. So I don't think that should change. But I do think the systems for mooring could be better.
Thistlegorm obviously is a big subject of these discussions, especially in the last few years. And John and Dr. Adel, they've said most of the things and most of the issues, and they touched all the sensitive issues involving the situation which the Thistlegorm is in today. But a few points definitely have not been talked about. And since more or less I'm representing the industry which is mostly benefiting from the existence of the Thistlegorm, is the dive operators. And as well, concerning dive operations, the subject of how many divers and the volume of boats, the numbers of boats, the numbers of divers who are diving the Thistlegorm today is a huge factor, commercial factor of income, etc., etc. And that something have to be done is very clear. We cannot reverse the damage, we all know that. I mean, basically, if you really, really want to protect the Thistlegorm, you have to stop selling it. I mean, it's, as I said before, it's a very big commercial source of income, and it's going to be a huge decision with a lot of, loss of income. But if this shipwreck, which is so famous and one of the most amazing wreck dives in the world, if you really want to protect it and save it from complete destruction, until there is a proper and safe mooring system involved and established, and operators and boats are ruled how and when and how many of them can go and bring their divers over there. Until this is not happening, what else can we do? I can only see nobody is allowed to go. The fact is that everybody have to agree to this. It cannot be that some operators decide to do so and the rest will benefit, because then the clients who cannot dive with us or with other operators who decided to do the same, they will go to them and dive with them. So the volume of divers will not decrease. It's just going to be a loss of income for the operators who decided not to go there to protect the wreck. One issue is also have to be taken in consideration. In the past, responsible dive operators would never take beginner divers to these dive sites. The same way we have beginner divers now diving dive sites like this Tiran Straits drift diving in the blue, Ras Mohammed. Responsible dive centers until today do not take divers there unless they have at least 20 dives, or they proved on other dives that they are capable to dive these areas properly. On a wreck which is in the middle of the sea, where there is no protection around, when the weather is bad, it is really, really dangerous. You can be drifted away. That should be done only by serious, well-educated and experienced divers, and this is how it was handled in the past. Today we do find beginners who just finished their open water course a day before, and then they are taken to the wreck. And this is a practice which have to stop now. There should be a rule which have to be followed and obviously controlled, that beginners or unexperienced divers just should not be able to dive the wreck, which will reduce the number of divers there. So in the long run, if there is a plan, and if we are able to get financing or a system established professionally, and if you consider how multinational oil companies are able to secure gigantic drilling platforms in the middle of nowhere, there is the technology available for sure to create proper mooring sites so that the wreck can be dived safely without continue to damage it. It's just a matter of money, and it's a matter of finally making the step to make the survey and to have a visibility study done by professionals who will tell us and will tell the authorities and will tell the diving community this is what can be done, and that is how, and that is how much it will be cost, what the cost will be. I have guests today, and for sure many other dive centers who have a lot of repeater clients. Many of them are not going to the wreck anymore. They did it once. Many of them have seen it in its splendor and in its beauty when it was still very much intact and overgrown with corals. They've seen it. They went there a second time, years later, saw the stage of it and said, I will not go there anymore. I want to keep the memory of this wreck as of my first dive. I'm not going to go there and return. And not that I'm going to regret the money, but I'm going to be sad seeing what happened with it. So already a lot of repeater clients are not going to the wreck anymore, which is already a lack of income. So this is my point of view, which is quite radical, but I don't really see a different chance and another option to save the Thistlegorm.
Depths are my cradle, broken is my eternal sleep. Under the weight of the years I lie bent on myself. My arms, hopeless broken, don't bear weights anymore, lying down along my sides like shoots on the land. My force could do nothing to protect me from evil. In the still of that night, a blast woke me up. I fell helpless, didn't answer, silently went away, no reply, no sentence, on a journey to oblivion.